Ever since I could remember, I was obsessed with visual arts. So in my environment, I would sit and draw. And I would draw what I would imagine my world to be. So I would sit and look at the sunset or the sunrise and then see my environment, but try to draw something that is just like what I think would be great if this changed. So instead of seeing a landfill there, I would think of it as if this was the forest, or instead of the brothel, if this was like a playground for kids.
Welcome. Let me ask you a simple question that you shouldn't assume is an easy question to answer. Ready? How's work? When you think about it, that's a question that most of us answer pretty quickly. You know, we say things like fine or good or crappy. But most of us don't dig deep. But what if you did? You may need to ask yourself, why is it that work is whatever it is? Maybe it's prestigious, but maybe you're burned out. Maybe it's meaningful, but you're frustrated with the bureaucracy. If someone asked you that question, how's work, could you honestly answer that it's deeply fulfilling? And if not, what would it take for you to get there? Well, stay tuned, because that's where we're going to explore with a master in the field, a man with a career and a personal journey that is not only deeply inspiring, but will give you the tools you need to get from here to fulfillment. Welcome to the Dov Baron Show. Come for the stories, stay for the learning. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I advise high-performing leaders and organizations how to harness their emotional source code to transform their tribe. Our guest today is Mef Shebi. Mef is a first-generation immigrant from Ethiopia who's gone from mopping floors and cleaning toilets as a custodian in a cafeteria onto Harvard graduate, engineer, to management consultant, to policy advisor, and director of the MBA career coaching at UCLA Anderson School of Management, and now has a private practice called MC2 Career Coaching. More on Mef and his outstanding journey and how to answer that question, how's work, in just a moment. You're tuned into the Dov Baron Show. Each episode is an exploration into the minds of those who are shaping the world. Every episode is a raw, unscripted collaboration between my guests and me as we dive in to discover the truths that very few people are willing to admit. We find guests who are often really quite unknown to the general public, but absolute titans in their field. The people that high-profile leaders turn to when they need to find their edge. If you're the kind of leader who craves depth over sound bites, just hit that subscribe button right now, because this is where real thinkers come to sharpen their edge. If you've ever wondered how to prepare the next generation of leaders for the shifting paradigms of work, if you have ever wondered how to take actions aligned with your values and have purposeful, meaningful, fulfilling career, or how to make your time at work more meaningful, this episode is for you. Our guest today is Mef Shebi. This man has had a journey that is profoundly inspiring. It speaks loudly to the American dream. It leaves us with questions about where the U.S. is and what it's facing in the falling population and potential brain drain. So, ladies and gentlemen, please turn up the volume and help me to welcome a sincerely inspiring man who's been drinking from the fountain of youth. He's the author of How's Work, Mef Shebi. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dov. I really, really appreciate you having me. Thank you for the kind introduction. That was incredible. I need to have you anywhere I go. I feel like I should bring you with me. That was so inspiring to hear. So incredibly grateful to be here. Thanks for having me on and for a wonderful conversation.
You're welcome. And I'm going to be over at your house tonight as you come home from work.
Nice.
I'll be doing that intro for your missus.
Yeah, I need to record it and play it anytime I feel like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
I love it.
So as I said, you have quite the story, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But I guess my first question to you is, how's work?
Work is meaningful for me. I have the privilege of coaching, guiding, mentoring the next generation of leaders. In my day job, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a director of MBA career coaching at UCLA Anderson, and these people that I coach, they are going to be managers, executives within different companies across different industries and functional areas. And for me to be able to kind of help them pause and think about, who are you? what do you care about, what's important to you, and how do you have impact in a meaningful way is such a privilege. And so it's really questioning kind of their journey and helping them be more self-aware and aligning the things that they do with their true values. And so I think that's what to me is very meaningful about what I do. And then in my own coaching practice, being able to work with a diverse audience of people, not just in the business community, but just across the board globally, and being able to help people, again, figure out who are you, why are you here, and how do you have a meaningful impact in your life.
So I said in the intro that you've had a very interesting and inspiring journey.
Yeah.
Now, you were born in Ethiopia. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Let's just be clear. You weren't born into affluence.
Definitely not.
Right. So it's not like, oh, you were born in this country where people are not so wealthy, but you were. You weren't. So you weren't born into affluence. You weren't born into any sort of prestigious position. I can clearly remember when America became a point to me. I can clearly remember that in my life when I went, oh, there's this place called America and it has the American dream. Do you remember when that became a potential for you, when you were like, wow, that's where I want to be?
Yes. To give a little bit more context, just for people to understand my upbringing. So born and raised in Ethiopia, we were living in the capital, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and we were in a very poor community. So just to paint a picture for you, we were in this big compound. 4 families were living together in that compound. So each family had multiple aunts, cousins, like large families, 4 or 5 kids. So, pretty much a very compact community with lots of people in it. And then surrounding our environment, you have a brothel right next door, prostitutes at night. So I didn't understand it as a kid. My dad will explain to me, don't go there. And I didn't understand what it was. So brothel next door, landfill, a 5-minute walk, a massive landfill. So the smell is just like intoxicating. On my way to school, that was what I walked across. And then we were also very close to the government parliament. So anytime there was any sort of revolution, protest, things like that, it was the epicenter. So I would see sometimes tanks, people with weapons just moving around, soldiers around. And at the same time, there are merchants, there are shops. So if you can imagine like a massive market, like bazaar. So all of that was happening in my community. And so very much poor community, electricity, water, we would get them in turns. This week you might have electricity, next week you might have water. So it was kind of by turns that you would get it. I remember taking showers pretty much was a weekly privilege. Most of it is like, cold showers pretty much. So that's the kind of environment I grew up in.
I want to be respectful of the audience because I don't want to have people assume they know where Ethiopia is.
Yeah.
I happen to know what it is because I know about falashas.
Nice. Yes.
So I know about the falashas. And by the way, if you want to know where Ethiopia is, do your research into temple that may be holding the lost covenant of the ark. So the lost ark, the one that was taken
100%.
from the temple, there is a place in Ethiopia that is guarded by Ethiopian guards that claims to have the lost ark of the covenant there. So there's a little bit of interesting trivia for you to go off on, so that people know where it is.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Deep, rich history. So I would encourage your listeners to definitely go down kind of the rabbit hole of like learning about the history of Ethiopia. Located in East Africa, very rich history, never been colonized. And to your point, the Ark of the Covenant, and a place where my grandmother went actually. And I remember she wanted to take me there too. But it's a whole pilgrimage to go up there. But I did make it closer to that area. But again, it's highly guarded. You don't really just go in. But it is a very interesting place. And also 83 different tribes, different languages, different cultures within the same country.
3 completely different languages.
3 completely different languages, 83 different tribes with their own community, with their own culture, with their own like dress, food, cuisine, everything. It's an incredible place in every way. and even natural resources, just amazing forests and landmarks.
So this is one of the things that I find very interesting about Africa in general that people are pretty ignorant of. These countries are often extremely rich in resources and in culture, but they've not been utilized by those people. They're often been utilized by colonizers. And as you said, Ethiopia wasn't colonized. So, for instance, the Queen of Sheba in the Bible, who Solomon was involved with, that's Ethiopia. There's a great amount of gold and there's a great amount of other great minerals and riches and all kinds of things there that have never been used for the enrichment of the people. Oftentimes, corruption has caused a lot of problems. Like I said, in other countries, it's been colonization. But the people who are living there are still rich in these cultures, poor in prosperity. Is there a vision of a dream? You know, when you're a kid in that world, living next to the landfill and potential tanks and the bazaar and potential revolutions and all those things, is it even comprehensible that there's something else? Because I know that where I was born was a poor ghetto, and I know that for most of the people around me, there was no comprehension of anything beyond that. Yours is a very different environment, but I imagine in many ways that same sort of mentality.
I completely agree. I think it's very challenging to think or imagine a world outside of that context, because in a lot of ways, you're right. Every single day, you're not exposed to anything different than the environment you're seeing, right? So it's like to just think about, oh, there's a world outside of this, doesn't come naturally, is not accessible to you, is not visible. So it didn't come to me without kind of some level of exposure. So the way it happened for me was, so both my mom and dad were educated and valued education heavily. They actually migrated from the villages to the city. They didn't grow up in any sort of privileged kind of context. My mom's parents were farmers. My dad, he lost his parents when he was a kid, so he was raised by his aunt. But they had to move to the city for a better opportunity and education. And luckily, they made it, in the sense like my dad finished college and then had a job. But job during that environment or early on, this goes back even to what you said about, even though the country was never colonized, there's lack of leadership. And as a result of that, lots of corruption, lots of abuse. And because tribally we have 83 different tribes, there's also tribal conflict that happens. There are minority tribes, there are majority tribes. And so there's a lot of tension around that as well, in terms of even geographically resources, where you find resources and what tribe kind of has dominion over those resources matter. So you see all these factions play out in politics, obviously, but I pin it to lack of leadership, lack of vision, lack of cohesion in a lot of ways in terms of harnessing the resources for the benefit of the country. But my dad, early on, he had to work under the government because we were under a communist regime at the time. It was called the Derg regime that we grew up under. I believe in 94 or like around 10 years old, like there was a revolution that happened, and then the government was overthrown and there was a new regime that came on, and that government took power for another 30 years. And well, he was working for the government, and then he had to find a new job. And so the new government thankfully hired him. And then as a result of his new job, he had access to travel outside the country. So he would go to Europe, he would go to the US and come back. And anytime he would go and come back, he would bring back, I would say, movies. For me, what really fascinated me was like these storybooks that I would just like start reading. Like they're fictional books. The Adventures of Tintin. I don't know if you've heard of these books.
Which is actually Belgian.
Oh, Belgian. Exactly. Yeah. So Belgian, Adventures of Tintin. He would bring back even like Daniel Steele, very like a romantic novel. So he would bring back those novels. And mind you, I didn't speak English. I didn't know how to read and write in English. So for me, it was more like, what are these things talking about? And then one of the neighbors' mother, like in our neighborhood, one of the kids that we used to hang out with, his mother was a flight attendant for Ethiopian Airlines. So then she would fly almost every week and then bring back similar things, lots of like VCR videos American movies. And the first time I got exposed to anything outside of kind of my world where I visually can see something was watching the movie Home Alone. So I don't know if you remember Home Alone, but I would watch that and I was just like,
As you said it, I was thinking about that house
that house.
that this kid is in alone compared to where you lived.
Correct.
That house alone would have been big enough for probably most of the neighborhood you were living in.
100%. So that to me was like, wait, there is a world like this? There's a house, like neighborhoods like that, and kids like doing things like this. Again, it's fictional, but in my mind, I'm just like, this is recorded somewhere, and there's a place like this. That was my early introduction, I would say, to imagining, oh, there could be a world that is different. And every time my dad flew out, every time my neighbor, the flight attendant, they flew out, I'm like, where are they going? Even the idea of flying. Well, I would see planes. I've seen helicopters, even fighter jets back in the days, they would fly by. And I was just like, where are they going? What would happen here? And that really was the gateway for me to start thinking about, oh, okay, I need to find this world.
So there's another world that's completely different than yours.
Yeah.
But inside the world you're in, back in Ethiopia as a kid, how old were you when you moved to North America?
17.
Right. So in that 7 years in between there,
Yeah.
is there thought of work? Because your book is How's Work? And I'm thinking, well, what's the context of work? Because I'm imagining that work in your imagination in that time is I'm either going to do what my dad does, and his is a pretty good job because he gets to fly and he gets to have a bigger experience, or to work in the bazaar with other people.
Yes.
Right? So there's not probably many choices. At what point does it become an idea of working and what working could be? Because I'm making shit up, so forgive me.
I love
But I
this.
don't think that it could have a lot of sense of fulfillment of like, oh, well, let me look at my values. Or it was
Definitely
like,
not.
could I get a job and feed myself?
Yeah, definitely. That's not even a question. Who am I? What are my values? That's not even remotely close to what I'm thinking about. If I may give you a little bit additional context here, ever since I was, I don't know, 4 or 5, so ever since I could remember, I was obsessed with visual arts. So in my environment, I would sit and draw. And I would draw like what I would imagine my world to be. So I would sit and look at the sunset or the sunrise and then see my environment, but try to kind of draw something that is just like what I think would be great if this changed. So instead of seeing a landfill there, I would kind of think of it as like, oh, if this was a forest, or instead of the brothel, if this was like a playground for kids. I would just imagine these things and I would start drawing. And that was something I was, besides going outside and playing with kids, sitting and just drawing, I could do that for hours. And I remember my parents at some point were like, he seems to be really obsessed with this and he could do this for hours. So then out of my own interest, again, poor, we didn't have the instruments, the painting instruments or things like that to draw with. I was just using pencil and paper and that was it. But because they saw I was really, really into it, I remember my mom taking me to this community center that had like different types of activities. There's sports, there's arts, there's different things. It's the equivalent would be like a YMCA for the US. So I went there. It's free. So I started drawing and doing artwork there and loved it. Obsessed again, like very much into it. And I remember at some point that started to affect my schoolwork. So instead of like doing homework or doing any sort of schoolwork, I would just get into my arts and I would just do that more than my schoolwork. And that became a problem, obviously. You know, my parents are like, okay, this is a hobby. This is cool for you. This is great. You might have fun here, but you need to focus on your studies. You need to focus on your homework. You need to do well. In our world, in the developing world, it's like you have ranking systems and like it's very standardized examinations and tests. It was not, what do you call it? Like what is that word that people, it's not the method where you were like discussing and having conversations.
No.
It's the opposite of that, right? So because my schoolwork suffered a little bit, they told me you can't do that anymore. Until you are doing well in school, you can't do arts. But I did it without them knowing about it.
So other kids are off hiding in their room with Playboy magazines. You were off with a pencil and a piece of paper secretly drawing.
Secretly drawing.
I think Mef's getting his rocks off. How do you know?
Yeah.
He's got a pencil.
I loved it. It was just something I really enjoyed. Fast forward, I'm in my teens. I realized, okay, arts is not going to get me far. Nobody values it from a career standpoint or work standpoint. In the cultural context that I'm in at that time, what can get me out of this world that I'm in? So I see our neighbor, she's a flight attendant. Oh, she flies every week. That's interesting. Oh, my dad, he works for the government, but he gets to travel. So do I need to be them? Do I need to work so I can be that? My artistic side of me started to imagine, where I started to think about, well, what transports them to these places? A plane, right? And then I was like, oh, I can be the one who flies the plane and I can go anywhere I want. I see cars, I see trucks, I see people using these transportation mediums to go to places. So I started imagining, okay, flying is an experience I've never experienced. It seems like a really exciting thing. Artistically, I can imagine. Science came more naturally to me. So like this idea of there is gravity, there is just physics in general. It was something that I was gravitating towards, and it made sense to me because I was also thinking of it artistically. So I would just think of it as like the plane is flying just like a bird, and what's the aerodynamic situation here? And I would just think about it very visually and very artistically. And then I started gravitating towards, I really want to become a pilot. And pilot as a career was something that was valued. So you can be a doctor, you could be an engineer, or you could be a pilot, and you can do well in Ethiopia. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to become a pilot. And that was something I started getting really obsessed over. What do I need to do to become a pilot? My parents were like, I told them I want to become a pilot. And they said, definitely no. For them, it was more like, you need to go to college, go to like a university, get your degree. And you don't need to go to college to become a pilot necessarily. You can go to pilot training school and kind of go that route. But my dad was like, no, you have to do college and university.
So at that point in Ethiopia, you're still living in Ethiopia.
Yep.
Were they looking at you going to university in Ethiopia?
Yes. For them, it was very clear. Okay, if you do well, then you will go to the university here in Ethiopia. And then once you finish college, then if you really want to be a pilot, then you can be a pilot. But at least you have now this credential.
Right.
And again, in the immigrant community, you're either a doctor, an engineer, or a disappointment.
I'll just tell you, it's doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, or disappointment.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. You can't be anything else, right?
I also understand because my community is the same where I come from. So I fell into the disappointment category because I too was an artist as a child, and that's what I was going to be. And it was like, okay, so I get it.
So you can relate. You can totally understand. So for me, I was just doing it really to appease them. I never thought I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an artist. But then the pilot thing came on because I wanted to just get out of my environment. And that would be an avenue to get out. But then they still were like, nope, you need to be either a doctor or an engineer. But in Ethiopia, it was only those two options really that people obsessed with.
How did you end up coming to the United States? This literally is thousands of miles away. But it seems like even sort of conceptually a million miles away.
Correct. As I started learning more through these pop culture muses, like whether it's the movies or the books, I start to, well, if I need to leave, I need to learn the language. I need to learn English. And then I started really being obsessed about like going to the library and teaching myself English. And there were classes at school that nobody really took. So then I started to kind of really take these classes. At this point, I was in my teens, so probably 13, 14. And so I started really getting into learning English because I figured that will open up the door for me to go to this foreign land. I think around that time, internet was starting to come up. So then I started going into these internet cafes and started reading about like, how do I go? And I started to look at schools. I was not interested in staying in the environment that I was in. I was really committed to, I need to leave. I need to go. And even my thought was, okay, if I leave and go to a foreign country that perhaps has this kind of like very open, you can be an artist, you can be whatever you want to be mentality. And at the time, it was the United States that was really kind of front and center, given movies were all promoting kind of the US, the books I was reading, a lot of it was kind of US centric or Western centric. So I started to gravitate towards that. And then eventually I started to say, I need to go to college in the US. And that's how it came about. So I said, when I finish high school, I'm going to college in the US. And then my parents were like, you've never been in the US. Why are you obsessed with this thing? I said, I'm going. This is going to happen. And that became my motivation. This is my vision. My vision is to leave my surrounding, my environment, go to a better environment in my mind based on all the things I'm reading and watching. And then once I get there, then I will figure out a way to become what I want to become, which was at the time, again, an artist.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're already halfway through the show, and we've not got you to America yet.
I know. I feel like we need hours to cover.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot here. And we're going to come back in part 2 and talk about not only arriving in America, but this extraordinary career journey you've been on, from the dream of being an artist onto having your own consulting and coaching practice now and working with universities, etc. People are going to be listening who are probably thinking, how do I get to my dream? They're not coming from Ethiopia, but maybe they're coming from a job that they're like, God, this feels repressive. And I want to give them that this backstory is really to show that wherever you are, there is a path forward if you are willing and committed to doing what it takes. So we're going to come back in part 2 and go into that. Before we do that, we want to make sure that people know where they can find out more about you, Mef, about your practice, and of course about your book, which I know is available on your website. Please tell people where they can find out more about you.
Yeah, they can find it on my website. It's mc2careercoaching.com. So MC2, M and 2 C's, basically Mef Career Coach is kind of what it stands for. But if they go on mc2careercoaching.com, it has all my information there. My coaching practice, as well as link to the book How's Work, and where they can order directly from there.
Fantastic. Of course, we'll make sure that and any of your social media links are posted in the show notes, and you'll be able to find them there. We're going to be back in just one click with more from this incredibly inspiring man, Mef. We're going to be back in just one click. So stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with our special guest, Mef Shebi. Mef is a first-generation immigrant from Ethiopia who has gone from mopping floors and cleaning toilets as a custodian on to becoming a Harvard graduate, and then eventually going on from policy advisor to the director of MBA careers coaching at UCLA Anderson, and having his own private practice, MC2 Career Coaching. In part 1 of the show, we talked about this man's journey and the awakening of his spirit, the awakening of his dreams, of going from this country, Ethiopia, and being exposed to America by things like movies like Home Alone, and what it was like to have that dream and walk that dream into a reality that would seem impossible. Now, I want to be clear here that if you didn't catch part 1, you probably want to go to that, because you might be thinking, I'm in this job, it's kind of crap, I don't like it, I'm not very fulfilled, and it doesn't seem like there's a path out. But what part 1 of this show did was it showed you that it's not about necessarily there being a direct path, but about you being willing to envision a path and then commit to it, like finding that fire within your own belly to move forward, because that's what it takes. And so we talked a lot about that at the beginning of part one. So now in beginning of part two, I want to have Mef arrive in the United States. He's going to university. There's a journey here. So you start out as an immigrant and you're going to university, but you're also cleaning toilets and mopping floors. Start us off on that journey, arriving in the US.
Yes. So I get to the US, and again, I'm thinking, wow, I am in the land that I have imagined for a long period of time. And I'm thinking, the American dream is here. I'm now starting to live the dream. Well, little did I know.
The dream starts with a bucket.
Yeah. Dream starts with a nightmare, I think, where I was just, wow, like, oh, I need to work to be able to earn a living because I was on an academic scholarship. So my school was paid for, but as far as any additional income, I needed to be able to make more money. The reason for that was my family also was able to immigrate because my dad won this diversity visa lottery. So coincidentally, that happened at the same time. And so they were all able to move. But now my dad had retired at that point. My mom was the only one working. And I'm the eldest of the family. I have three other siblings. And even though I can go to college for free because I have this academic scholarship, my mom was the only bread earner and she couldn't support the whole family with the income she was making. So I had to work. I'm barely just arrived. I don't know my environment that well. And to really help financially my mom and my family, I started this job. And this was a job in a small cafeteria. They had no idea I was on an academic scholarship at a prestigious college, but I was doing this while school was out. So school didn't start yet. So I had to wait until the actual semester was to begin. So during that period, I started working as a custodian pretty much. And I remember the manager telling me, he was this person from Afghanistan, immigrant. He told me, "Welcome to America." And he handed me the mop. It was just a wild experience because what I was imagining coming to America, and then when he handed me the mop and said, "Welcome to America. And if you work really, really, really hard, one day you will become the supervisor like me." And I was completely demotivated. It was hard work. It was not at all what I imagined. And so every single day, it really sucked. I was cleaning toilets, mopping, cleaning the whole place. And I did a good job, but it was just draining. It was exhausting. It was meaningless. It was not fulfilling in any shape or form. And that experience taught me and even motivated me that I will do whatever I can to not do this. I need to pursue my vision, pursue my dream to find something that is going to be meaningful for me. And that was kind of my early introduction to work in the US. And then I realized what was not meaningful, what was draining, what was exhausting, what was not aligned. And that kind of pushed me more to focus on the school side really hard because I figured, okay, I don't have any history here. I don't have any background. I don't have any credential. Thankfully, I had a scholarship to go to a four-year college where I was like, okay, I'm going to make the most out of this opportunity. And that's what I did. And I leaned into my strength more because I couldn't speak English that well. I was not from here. I was really good with science, math, physics. That came more naturally to me. So I gravitated towards that. And I ultimately became an engineer, which was the ironic thing in the sense like
I'm assuming that was 4 years.
4 years. Yeah.
So in that
Yeah.
4 years to go from arriving to getting a degree as an engineer, you're working as a custodian. Did you work as a custodian that whole time?
No. So I did it for almost a year and then stopped because I couldn't do it anymore.
Because you felt the drain of that.
Yeah.
But when you arrived, your English wasn't that great.
Nope. Yeah.
So when you changed careers, is your English better now?
Yes. because I worked on it. So in college, it was very uncomfortable, even though I was in the engineering program and I didn't even really have to do much liberal arts. I chose to pick up classes. I did a lot of public speaking and presentation focused type of courses, lots of improv, lots of arts. It is something that I'm always pushing myself to grow in because I knew the value of it. If I do really well in that, then it gives me access to more options because then I can communicate with people better. And that's what I did in college. I took up a lot of liberal arts courses, even though it was not part of my engineering curriculum. And so I came out of that experience from college a better communicator and also very technically savvy and very analytical the program I went through was pretty rigorous. So I came out engineer, could communicate well. And then my parents were really proud. Oh, like you came to America, you were in Custodian, you really made the most out of the opportunity you had. Now I'm an engineer.
So you graduated Harvard, you're an engineer. Now the obvious thing is go get a job as an engineer.
Right.
But that's not what happened.
Quick correction there. The college was at University of Virginia. So this was UVA undergrad college. Graduate school is Harvard. I finished UVA, became an engineer. And then now the job is become an engineer. So I became an engineering consultant. And so that was my job. And I was really good at it because it was very technical and I can apply my math and engineering skill set. Just to give you kind of quick synopsis there, I was highly paid. At this point, it's like night and day, right? It's from custodian to engineering consultant. I am traveling across the country, multiple clients in technology and energy and health, education, different sectors that we were providing professional services to different clients across different industries and functions, paid well. I did not like it at all. So now I'm doing this job. Parents are very proud. Anyone who sees my lifestyle will think very successful, like you are living the American dream in every way. But for me, it felt empty.
That's interesting because a lot of people will be saying, well, you should just be grateful. You had all this opportunity. And I think that a lot of people who are very successful in their lives, on paper, it looks phenomenal. They have the big house, they have the nice car, they have the right family, they have lots of income. And I know, because I work with them, where they say, I just feel like such an ungrateful person to even say I'm unhappy, to even say I'm not fulfilled. Is this me being an entitled asshole that I even want more? And the answer is no, because there's something in your soul calling out for more. You had that within you. And I imagine, again, I'm making stuff up, but I imagine that's even more difficult when you're living not only the dream, but you're living an externalized version of the dream. It's beyond magnificent. You're flying across the country, you're consulting, you're living the life, and you went to the famous university and you've got blah, 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 blah. How dare you think of something else?
Yes.
Just be bloody grateful, get your head down and appreciate what you've got. I want to know, because there's going to be listeners and viewers going, oh, I can't face that. How did you deal with that? Maybe it was external from mom and dad or others, but maybe it's very strongly internal. How do you battle that demon of don't be an ungrateful little shit and just appreciate the wonderful things you have?
Wow, you put it really well. I was doing that to myself. What you were saying, I was doing that to myself. I'm like, wait a minute. It is the opposite reality that you are living right now compared to your upbringing. Like flying business first class. For me, the amount of money that's coming in every month into my account versus when I was working as a custodian on an hourly basis, just thinking about that by itself, this is incredible. And I am grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm helping my parents. I'm helping my family financially. Every day I go to work, I'm sitting at my desk and just constantly haunted by this idea of like, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, where every person is telling me, wow, we're so proud of Mef, or telling my parents, you must be so proud of your son. He made it. He did all this stuff. And I would literally tell myself, okay, you need to be grateful. So then now what? What do you do with this?
See, that to me is the point that I think everybody needs to get here. You can be grateful and dissatisfied. Those things are not mutually exclusive. You can be extremely grateful for all the things you have. You can be grateful for the wonderful things you have in your life, and you can still feel that soulful hunger for something better. And that was what you got to.
That is what I got to. And every day was a reminder. If you think about work, it goes back to the book I wrote. When you think about work, every person works, right? And if you look at your lifespan, on average, people live like 80 years? That's about 4,000 weeks. And half of that is dedicated to work. About 2,000 weeks, 90,000 hours, you're working. So that is a huge chunk of your life you're investing. And to invest that much time, and we all say time is the most precious asset. And what is precious? Precious means valuable. And then if you're saying time is valuable and you're investing 90,000 hours of your life on something that you're saying is valuable, then it needs to be meaningful. Then it needs to give you a level of fulfillment and satisfaction where you're like, this does make sense. If I ask you, what is meaningful for you to do? If I gave you 1 hour to live, what is the most meaningful thing you will do in that hour? Your answer, Dov, it will be different from my answer. It will be different for whoever is listening here. Every person will have their own version of what's meaningful. And at the end of the day, that was the question I was asking myself, where I said, okay, I don't know how much time I have. Nobody does. And if I'm going to invest time in a meaningful way where I say I'm getting value out of this, or I'm feeling like I'm living my full life, then I need to be doing things where I am engaged, where I am energized, where I am excited, where I am fulfilled. Like all of these things that translate to meaning need to be present. And thankfully, I had an actual reaction that led me to really push me to action. So for me, it was like I was having these thoughts constantly, but I wasn't acting on them because, again, I was kind of like, shut up and just do this. This might be your thoughts, but maybe it'll change. Maybe things will change. I was getting promoted. I was moving up the ladder. I'm like, maybe at some point it will change. So I started to kind of self-explain, or at least self-talk myself out of the action piece. Eventually it got to my health. So it got to the point where I was burnt out and I was going to the hospital. The really turning point for me was one day I woke up in the middle of the night, midnight, woke up, my heart was racing. It was as if like I ran like a 100-meter dash. And I was like, what the hell? Is this what heart attack feels like? Is this what it is? Ran to the ER. They did a whole checkup on me, EKG, everything, the whole run up. And then they realized nothing's wrong. What? This is confusing. They did multiple tests. I had follow-ups. It was exhausting. But then what I realized, they told me, oh, we're going to diagnose you with stress at work. And I realized, oh, why am I so stressed out at work? I'm doing really well, exceptionally well. I'm getting promoted. I'm getting paid. All these things are happening. But it started to affect my actual well-being, my own health. And I realized this is the turning point. I need to change this. And I started to think about, okay, if this is not it, what is it? What is the work that's going to give me meaning?
Let's go to that right now. Let's get to the practicality of this, because I'm certain many of our viewers and listeners are in the third phase of their life, meaning that in that last third where they've had a career, they've done very well, they've got the right house, the nice car, etc., etc. They have the space financially that they can take a bit of a break and they can look at their lives. And some of them are not, but there's a good deal of people, good amount of people who are saying, I want it to be meaningful. I realize that the generation before me retired at 65. I'm not interested in that. That doesn't light my candle. I'm not interested in playing golf for the rest of my life. I want to do something that's meaningful and fulfilling. That person might be 50 years old, 55 years old, but they also might be 35 and saying, I need something meaningful. And I know you coach on this. You have a whole structure around this. You do it, like I said, for Anderson Business.
Yeah.
So give us some of the framework, some of the structure, so that our viewer, our listener can go, okay, I'm feeling this pressure. I've got to meet the needs. And at the same time, I've got to fulfill the expectations, but I feel like I'm a bit dying inside. What's the framework to help them move out of that dying inside to having meaning and fulfillment and purpose in their lives? What's some of the steps so they can start looking at that?
So what I started doing, which was so effective for me, I compiled it in hindsight. I went through my own journey and then reflected back and then really started to think about what did I actually do, and then built out the frameworks around it. And I've been coaching thousands of leaders, people that are looking to have meaning in their work and life, apply these tools to get there. A simple one I can share, this is in my book, is to think about, one, what is your vision for your life? What is your vision for your work? What gives you meaning? Meaning is an emotion. So if you really boil it down, you can think about meaning as an emotion. And there's positive emotion, negative emotion. Anytime you are doing an activity, and life is work, by the way, so work is happening all the time. And if you want to become even more scientific about it, you can think of it as energy. And so anytime you are energized, you are excited, you are engaged, you are fulfilled, you're doing something purposeful, it's meaningful. The opposite of that is you're disengaged, you're checked out, you're burnt out, you don't care, it doesn't matter. That's the opposite effect, right? So a framework I give people is, I think 3 ingredients need to be present for your work to feel meaningful. I categorize it into 3 areas. So curiosity, exposure, and values. So these 3 things are critical, and for each person is different. Every single person has different recipes to these 3 ingredients. So when you take curiosity, asking yourself what sparks you, or what excites you, what engages you. In other words, what sparks your curiosity? And when I talk to people about this, they're like, I don't know. Some people, they're like, I know what I'm curious about. Others are like, I don't know what I'm curious about. So to your listeners, I would ask, what engages your curiosity? And if you don't know where to begin, I ask a few questions around it. So this could be, what activities do you enjoy doing? It feels like time doesn't even exist when you do that activity, right? So you can think of an activity that you can do forever. You can think of a quality. What qualities do you admire? And that can connect it to your curiosity. Another is learning. What do you like to learn about? What is exciting to you to learn about? So for me, activity, quality, learning fall under curiosity. So figuring out what is the thing that you are curious about. It doesn't have to be one thing, but you have a thing and you need to really pinpoint what that is important.
So that's really important for people to grasp, because I think that a lot of people will say, I don't know what I'm curious about is one side, and on the other side, I'm curious about a lot of things. If I'm getting you right, Mef, then write down all of the things and then go through all of the things. This is what I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say if you've got a list of 6 things, 8 things, 10 things, whatever it is on that list, and say, okay, if you had to spend a week studying one of them and only one, which would you have to study? And that might be a hard choice, but you will get to one. And then you go, well, I can't get to one. Well, get to 2. Get to 2. And then see if those 2 are tied together in some way. What's the curiosity there? Because curiosity is this very broad spectrum thing that we can all have. I'm curious about a million things, but there's a common thread about those million things for me, and there will be for you. And it's looking at that, how does that pull together? Because that's what I hear Mef talking about, is this engagement is so important. We talk a lot about engagement. A lot of billions of dollars have been wasted on engagement because people don't know what it is. But it's actually engaging your curiosity. I want to find out about this. This is exciting. That's really important. So from a curiosity, where do we go?
That is a great point. For people struggling with this, go into your phone right now, pick out a picture of an activity you did or you've done before. It's a snapshot of time. And if you were to do that forever, if I ask you, go into your photo album and pick out an activity that you will have to do for the rest of your life, no other activity, that's the only activity you would do, that will push people to think about prioritizing. And it goes back to your point, one or two things where you can narrow it to. And every person can do this. I've done it in multiple workshops, and it works well when you're like, have to really struggle through it a little bit and get to the point and say, oh, now I see it. Or there's a pattern, or there's a theme where you're like, okay, this is what it is. For me, it's having conversations with people like you, Dov, and just engaging. Like, I can sit in a coffee shop and talk to you for hours. That engages my curiosity. Learning about human stories, coaching people, that is engaging to me. So that is one. And then the exposure is, how are you growing? That's the second piece, which is every human being has to find a way to grow. We're all evolving. The world around us is evolving. So in relation to your curiosity, how are you growing? How are you exposing yourself to experiences, to different types of activities that will push you to grow in that space? And that is another way to kind of evolve in a way that helps you, again, become more competent, become more of an expert. It's almost like building up your knowledge base, your expertise, your skill set, your gifts, if you want to call it that too. So that's the second area, because complacency and not growing could also feel like I'm not going anywhere. It's not helping me reach my vision. So you have to find constantly exposures, experiences that will allow to engage your curiosity in a way that helps you grow. And then the last one, the biggest one, values. I know you delve into this topic a lot in your podcast and your conversation. Values, I think, is the most critical in this element of finding meaning, because your choices reflect your values at the end of the day. Whatever choice you're making, it's a reflection of your values. So if you ask someone, what are my values? I look at their choices, the choices they're making, and I can tell you what their values are. And in that regard, when it comes to work, you want to ask the question, where do I want to work? So like, if you think about ideally, where do I want to work? What place comes to mind? Is it an office? Is it your apartment? Is it on the beach? Is it a coffee shop? The environment says something about what you value. Who do you want to work with? Who are the people you want to surround yourself with, and who you want to connect and work with? And that says a lot about character, personality, traits, things like that. What would you like to do? How would you like to feel when you're working in that environment? Values also play a huge role in this. For example, for me, two things matter in my work. One is trust. I need to, as a coach in the world that I exist, trust is a value that is central to what I do, and I value it immensely. So in places where there is mistrust or there is no trust that exists, I don't thrive in. So I have to be in an environment where people trust me, I trust people, it gives me autonomy to be who I am, and I'm able to do it. The second value that's important to me is simplicity. I hate bureaucracy. I like to make complex things simple. And it goes back to my upbringing. I was in an environment of chaos and complexity in every shape and form, if you can imagine it. And every single day, I'm trying to figure out ways to simplify, ways to make things more clear. And so that's important to me. And so that's how I would think about it. So curiosity, exposure, and values, and really digging deep into how does that translate to your environment.
And I would take that a step further and say, if you are, correct me if I'm wrong.
I love it, yeah.
If you are feeling that dissatisfaction and you're in a job that is really good, and they, whoever they are telling you, you should be grateful, you're very blessed, blah, 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 you know, all those things, #blessed.
Yeah.
You're having all that things, but you're feeling this soulful hunger within you, it's because those three things are not being met. You're not meeting the curiosity that is innate within you. You're not having the exposure to grow in the way that you need to grow, and you're misaligned with values, meaning you may be in the right place, i.e., Mef, you were talking about having to become an engineer when your soul was an artist. That's living mom and dad's values, or that's living the cultural values as opposed to your own. It's not wrong. It's just wrong for you. And so what I'm hearing from you, Mef, is when we ask this question, how's work? The answer is in those three things. Is my work enriching my curiosity? Is it engaging my curiosity? Am I growing? Is it giving me exposure to what I want exposure to? And is it meeting my values? When I answer that question, how's work? That's how I have to answer it. Not it's great, it's shit, it's crappy, it's frustrating. It's like those three questions. And that is the roots of the book. Is that right?
You got it right. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly the point I'm trying to bring across through the book.
Well, we are already at the end of part 2 of the show. I want to make sure that people can find out more about you. Before we do that, and before we sign off, let me ask you, when you think about it now, because obviously your life is very, very different from where it was, as a sort of final question, short answer, what's something that was a traditional belief system of where you came from that you found you had to give up and maybe was a little difficult to give up?
Ooh, wow. Short answer. That's a tough question, Dov. That is tough.
Like, I can tell you what mine was, just because it make it easy. Because I was born in abject poverty. And so my bullshit belief was that rich people were assholes. It was complete nonsense, but I had no reference point other than that they didn't want anything to do with us, where we were from. And then when I started to work in the world in the way that I do, I work with some people who are multi-billionaires and realized some of them, not all of them, of course, but not all poor people are great people. Many of them were incredibly kind and generous and loving, but I thought they were assholes because they didn't clean their own car. And what I learned later was, no, they're too busy. They've got better things to do than wash their own car. They valued their time and they were doing differently. That was a value I had to give up that really helped me to understand, oh, it's not true. And I think that where we come from gives us a set of beliefs and a set of values that are not real values. That's why I asked the question.
Oh, that's a great question. I see your point. To me, I think a value that I held on to dearly was the belief that I have to do what my elders tell me to do in order to make them proud or make my community proud is something that I held on to dearly. As long as I do what they told me, then I feel accepted and I am making them proud and I am the good son. I am doing all those things. I had to give that up entirely because I am able to be fully myself and lead a life of purpose and meaning and fulfillment doing exactly the opposite of that.
That's the point I want everybody to walk away with, is that sometimes there's a value you've got to give up in order to live the life you really want to live. And that the value you're tied to, which may not be your own, likely is not your own, is the thing that's keeping you from a life of meaning and purpose. And that's what Mef's been sharing with you all the way through this, in this entire journey from being a kid living next to the landfill to all this way to being this very highly qualified and very highly respected individual. Mef, it's been a pleasure and an honor, sir. Please tell people where they can find out more about you, your book, and all of your resources.
Thank you. Thank you, Dov. And to reach me, go to my website, mc2careercoaching.com, mc2careercoaching.com. It has all my details around what I coach people with and my offerings, as well as the link to the book. I welcome everyone to come and visit me and connect.
Fantastic. And is there a particular social media platform that's dominant for you?
LinkedIn. It's funny. My name is the only name that you will find on LinkedIn. So my first name, Meftehe Shebi, is the only name that is there. So if you search me, then you'll find me.
Well, again, thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure and honor. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. For you, dear listener, remember, those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of the tribe. Leaders who are committed to positively shaping the political and business landscape know that they must tap into what drives human behavior. I'm Dov Baron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified, actualized meaning is the single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. Remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so please go to wherever it is you tune in from and do us a favor. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show, because it makes a massive difference. Really does. And Apple really notices if you put a review. We really thank you for that. And of course, a big thank you to you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how's work? Is it meaningful? Is it fulfilling? Is it reaching your purpose? Are you staying curious? What is it doing for you? Is it a job of prestige, or is it something that's meeting your soul? There is other options, even when there doesn't seem like there is. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, in your life, and in your leadership impact. And I am out.